Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. My name is Brand Strong, your friendly commentator and host. Now, I made a video earlier this year called 2018 is the year of the corporate takeover, or something like that. I'm not going to look at the video or pull up the thumbnail or nothing, but it's there. It's back in a couple months ago. And it seems like I was kind of like charting a path for the way the marijuana reform of the laws have been going so far. And you probably know I've been just beating this this I've been beating this talking point up hard before then, before I even made that video. It was basically documenting the various moves in Michigan and the way that the legislator has taken the reins on the medical marijuana program here, and imposed all these super heavy restrictions and fees and taxes and stuff, basically out regulating the old way that it used to be. Now, I don't know if they actually have people back in the background getting ready to just take this thing over, or, they just look at every regulation in the way that it would benefit somebody that would be a big player coming in. And the thing about it is we got to preserve the small, many people involved rather than have, huge operations with just a few of them. Now the government likes the huge operations with just a few of them because it's easier for them to, work with just a few people to get their money and to do the things that they want to do with regulations and stuff. So I understand that. We can all kind of understand that that's why the government would be more persuaded to work with a small number of large facilities. And not only that, but that's the people that are lobbying the government the hardest, is people that have the money for big facilities that don't want the competition. So it's pretty easy to figure all this shit out. Now, I grabbed this tweet the other day I seen, and I just, it really touched me in my heart. And it's from Ashley Kislike from Vancouver, British Columbia. She's an operations manager for farmdispensary.com. Cannabis advocate, amateur musician, deeply introverted bookworm. So sorry if I blew you up. I did tell her I was going to write this, and she shared the tweet, so I figured she was going to be okay. Did I say write this? I wish I was writing this, but I'm just making a video about it. And I'm going to read this thread somewhat, probably most of it. Because it really kind of underlines what I was talking about with the corporate marijuana takeover. Only in Canada, it's even more like a government takeover. I mean, sure, the people that run the production and distribution is still going to be people on the ground that work for themselves or whatever. But I've heard Jody Emery and others that are in the cloud of this narrative about this corporate takeover mention the fact that it seems like, these regulation packages are reminiscent of when we were kids and there was the Soviet Union. And with the USSR and everybody, the propaganda over here in the West was that, the communism is bad, and the way communism is bad is because the government picks the winners, and if you're not connected to the party, then you don't get to be involved with the regulation packages. And guess what? Also, if you're not close to the party and you don't make any money, you can't afford to get involved with the business aspect. I mean, all the things that you heard about seem to be, including the high taxes. When you look at places like California, it seems to be like what they warned us about when we were younger, back in the 80s or whatever. This is what they were telling us about, was what communism was. Is that what's going on? The only way you're going to let us have legalized marijuana is if you have like a super strict communistic type government and big business only situation, crushing everybody else out of it. And the people that really are fighting this situation and have this narrative are people that were involved in cannabis before all these regulations and legalization movements happened. And in fact, like I was saying when I was on DC 420 LA's show, he kind of asked me, well, what do you mean by being when you were an activist? And what I mean is I was there growing and distributing the stuff when nobody else would, because it was highly risky. I mean, let's face it, even right now federally, marijuana is one of the most illegal substances there is in America. I mean, if you look at the statistics and the arrest numbers and you see the videos of how the cops treat people and they smell marijuana and stuff, I mean, it's very highly risky, to say the least. So if you're ever growing or distributing marijuana before the law has changed, you know, you're kind of a hero. So I'm going to go ahead and read this thread, and then I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but I do have some examples to show of exactly what she's talking about and what I've been kind of underlining about this whole corporate takeover. So here's her tweets. I'm a hardworking 27-year-old professional woman in the cannabis industry. I work hard to support an authentic, values-based company culture that is setting the tone for what recreational retail cannabis businesses should look like. I'm very disappointed in the proposed legislation. And then this one, I didn't get into the industry to basically work for the government. I was inspired by the pioneers and advocates who have carried us on their backs to where we are. I was inspired to make real change, not just with the cannabis, but with what a job could mean to somebody. But these proposed regulations are strangling the soul of this industry. Please don't turn this culture into a commodity. Let it flourish by making room for these people who fought for this so long. Let it flower with diversity in craft product and fair price ranges. The liquor board has too strong a role. We as entrepreneurs and artists are handcuffed to rules that will ignite a black market we've never seen. And the same marginalized people will be targeted, but this is Prohibition 2.0. We carry more $5 grams than any dispensary in Vancouver. We do that for our community, the downtown east side, to make the weight of our neighborhood feel a little lighter. I respect the public health approach, but I cannot overlook the hypocrisy. Liquor is every man's substance and far more harmful than cannabis, yet craft liquor stores can exist and contribute to their community in meaningful ways. Justin Trudeau, you're doing it wrong. And yeah, I mean, basically, when you talk about Canada, I pulled an article just to give you a quick overview, because I haven't really went into detail about Canada, but I do keep mentioning them from time to time when I'm doing stories about this, or when I'm like actually talking about what's going on in Canada because something made a big headline, like when they were discussing the rules for if you get caught driving stoned, for example. And one of the big things I've seen with these regulations, not only in Canada but everywhere else, is that it seems like they're giving the police every bit of leeway to still make marijuana arrests, no matter how many protections they offer the customers or the marijuana users or whatever. So it's like, yeah, you can use marijuana, but it's pretty much like in your house if you never drive anywhere, and you know, it's in a foil pack that looks like something that you get from a medical shipment or something. I don't know, it's weird. But anyway, I'm not going to read this, but I'm going to go over the finer points. So this article is talking about, are the legalization laws in Canada too strict? And when you say, are the regulations for this too strict, what are you really alluding to? What you're alluding to is that people are just going to stop going through the regulated market, or people are not going to participate in the regulated market like they would if it was more reasonable. And everybody can agree that we don't mind reasonable regulations. And what is reasonable regulations? Well, reasonable regulations, and I think it was Radical Russ that kind of amplified this in one of his writings. You basically have to legalize what's already going on. Duh. Just look at what's going on. Obviously, it works. Like in Michigan, we've had the same medical marijuana program for almost 10 years. And even though the cops and judges and everybody said this is illegal and that's illegal, people still did it. And we still had dispensaries. We still had people that grew. We still had the production of the marijuana that was in the dispensaries was from thousands of small producers rather than, a couple of factories and warehouses in every big city produced the weed for the whole state. It didn't work like that. It worked like nobody produced that much cannabis. You weren't allowed to. So, and it worked. And all you have to do is legalize that. And just like in Canada, whatever they had going on before was working, and all you have to do is legalize that. So what is some finer points of the strict cannabis rules they're talking about rolling out in Canada? Well, bigger law enforcement budgets. They're just going to give the cops money. Cops are like, hey, this is going to be harder to deal with when you legalize it, so we need more money. That doesn't make any sense at all. We don't need to use the cops if it's legal. That's what people aren't getting. It's just like the only way that the government and the regulators that want to have a regulated market that favors the big businesses can make that happen is if they have enforcers. Because that's how things like organized crime. How do you think organized crime works? Like a loan shark, for example. They don't just loan somebody money and have, good faith hope that the guy pays it back. They got people that'll go break your legs if you don't pay it back. And what they're doing, that's the way it is with these cops still lingering around marijuana, even though it's supposedly legal. But there's limits on this, and then they got these things that aren't even real, like driving stoned and whatever. There's just things that they still maintain as a reason to have to use the actual police for something like cannabis, which is completely harmless. All right, so let's move along. You might get a bunch of people or provinces or even individual places within a province that says, you know what, we don't want you to grow weed. Home growing is banned. And that's ridiculous. That's just absurd. How is it that you say marijuana is legal again if you're telling people they can't grow their own? That doesn't make any sense anywhere. In Washington State, are you hearing me? It doesn't add up, all right? It only adds up to some kind of mafia type thing where the government or big, when you talk about big business, they pretty much are the government in America. You tell me the government works for the people? They don't. They work for the big corporations, all right? That's pretty much it. Can you share your weed? Maybe not. It's kind of a weird thing. So you can't sell your weed or even give it to your friend, because basically that would represent competition. They don't want a bunch of people that out there that can do home grows. Now all of a sudden they're trading and buying each other's weed, and that takes a nice handful of business right out of their dispensaries or whatever they got, home deliveries, whatever, however they're going to do it. All kinds of marijuana adjacent businesses are going to get affected by these big businesses. And one of the things I keep telling people in my local area is the grow stores. I'm like, hey, you guys should be against the corporate takeover too. Because they got like, Monsanto just bought a bunch of shit like Sunlight Supplies. They got all the hydro fertilizer. They got pesticides. Obviously, they got Monsanto. It's like basically Scott's just bought all you need to pop open a factory without having any ancillary businesses connected to do anything. They have everything they need. They can set up the warehouse with grow lights, environmental controls that are all automated. They can set up robots. They got everything, man. They could do it all without the grow stores that are right now serving little growers everywhere. So grow stores, your days are numbered too, man. Distribution restrictions will limit access. That's now if you're talking about Americans for safe access. What that is they rate people, states and municipalities and whole countries, on how easy is it for somebody that needs cannabis, which is pretty much everybody, how easy is it for you to actually get it safely and at a reasonable price, because we still don't have any insurance companies willing to cover cannabis. And then the big one, and I'm sure that's what Ashley was talking about in her tweets, one of the main things she was probably looking at was this whole idea that the packaging. Now, when we look at the packaging, this is what the packaging is going to look like. This does not look like something... I would rather see a Ziploc bag or just a regular sandwich bag with a Sharpie tag on it that tells me what strain it is than this crap. Okay, so you got to have your THC, I guess, stop sign for some reason. And then your company name can't be fancy either. This can't be a logo. This just has to be a nondescript font like it already is. And I think you can have different colors, but that's pretty much it. And then you got this keep out of the reach of children. And there's even other warnings like using cannabis during pregnancy may harm your baby as a result in low birth weight. Now, there's no science to back that up. And in fact, there's no science to back up anything that would make you have to keep it out of the reach of children. However, I would highly recommend you keep it out of the reach of children just because you don't want anything to happen, you know? There's a lot of bad things that could happen. I mean, the cannabis itself is not going to hurt the child. So you got this packaging. It's a huge problem. It's basically, you know, the cannabis culture, if anything, it has flavor because a lot of people that are very creative are involved in cannabis culture. Like it or not, man, we're all artists in our own ways. And like it says on her situation here, she's an amateur musician. So, hey, you know, we're all artists. We all have ideas. We all think a lot. And that's why I always say that cannabis isn't even like other substances that people use to alter their consciousness, legal or otherwise. Cannabis has like a deep and rich background of artistic history that directly connected to it. And I mean, weed's just not for everybody, you know. Like there's a lot of people that don't find any utility value whatsoever in smoking weed. That's just a fact of life, man. Different strokes for different folks, dude. And this packaging is flat out bullshit. Because first of all, this isn't looking like, now you're talking about this is recreational marijuana. Like, woo, recreational marijuana. I get to smoke weed and get high. It's legal. They're trying to make that feel like big deal. Here's your weird looking package with a stop sign because there's THC. It's ridiculous, guys. I don't even know what to say about that. And then, you know, we got this corporate takeover. It's a worldwide thing going on. You see where different countries that have been growing medical marijuana for a while, like Canada and Israel and others, are jumping into this idea where they're going to supply certain countries with their medical marijuana so that they can maintain marijuana production bans. So it's not even a corporate takeover. It's just a corporate implementation from the get-go. Now, over in California, where once again, we go back to Radical Russ's quote where he's like, dude, just legalize the shit that people are already doing, man. Instead of trying to start up some whole new thing. And that's what's going on in California, man. Trying to pop up a whole new, popsicle stand. Whole new lemonade stand here with all different kinds of lemons. All different people squeezing them. Different limits on how many lemons get squeezed. It's just weird, all right? And the taxes are... They act like if they adjust the taxes, that's going to, make people more attracted to their market rather than the black market. Look, man, the reason the black market's so attractive is because those people are the ones you call the black market. Those are the people that made this shit happen. They are the market. And what you're talking about doing is coming in with some new people. You're banning marijuana in all these places where it's, flourished before. This just doesn't even make sense. That's how it is in Canada. Not in Canada, because that's a complete government in conjunction with corporations that are already well established as the ones that will be the monopolies. Over in California, though, only 1 in 7 cities allow recreational marijuana dispensaries. Man, let's just say this, guys. Prohibition is definitely on its way out. It's going to be a long time before that happens. But legalization is on its way in big time. All right? The rest of it's going to go like dominoes. I promise you that. This whole legalizing marijuana trend is just starting. When you got Republicans on the bandwagon, look out. They're... Basically, the whole world was looking at America like, well, as long as those Republicans aren't budging, I guess it's going to be illegal forever. And, now that you start seeing Republicans coming aboard, in different levels, anywhere from decriminalization all the way to John Boehner with the D schedule. So, I'm going to leave this at where it's at. But one more quote I want to pull. And this is from Jamaica, because I broke a story. I didn't break a story, but I commented on a story back in 2016 about Jamaica and how the aristocratic ruling class of the island decided that they were thinking about legalizing marijuana for tourism purposes. And then the thing was they were debating on whether or not to allow the Rastafarians, who've always been the ones growing the weed, are they going to let them in on it or not? And then we seen a licensing scheme for medical marijuana. Didn't look like they were trying to cut any Rastafarians in on that. So now we have a quote from, it was in Barbados today. And this is the group's spokesman from Cannabis Barbados, Peter Elaine. Cannabis Barbados is calling for an end to incarceration for the use of cannabis and the release of all those in prison for such, along with the expungement of records, which is like I say about Cory Booker's Marijuana Justice Act and Maryland's situation where they're trying to mandate diversity and licensing. Look, man, if you really want to right the past wrongs, just get rid of the arrest right now. Stop arresting people right now. Let everybody that's got marijuana charges the hell out of jail if they're even in jail. Prison, let them out. I don't care, oh, this is their third offense. They had 100 pounds of weed. So what? Cut them loose. Get rid of these, expunge all these charges. That's how you right the past wrongs. That's how you do it. And here's the quote on the takeover. We have also resolved to ensure that when the changes in legislation come, and make no bones about it, it has to happen, and we have seen it happen all around us. He's talking about this legalization movement that I've been talking about. He said, when these changes come, we want to make sure that the people who have suffered the most under these repressive laws that now exist, mainly Rastafari and all poor people, that we are able to benefit and not be excluded or sidelined when the big landowners decide to flex their muscles. What we do not want to see is that when the laws are changed, that the people that have all the land decide that they are going to plant the ganja, and the people that have suffered the most under that repression fighting to get a small part of it, he stressed. He added that the development of cannabis industry here would help the Barbados economy flourish, though through the many byproducts that could be produced from the plant. And I'm sure we all know that hemp is another avenue for that, whereas I'm not sure what the policy is for hemp on the island. But anyway, that's all I got on this for right now. But this corporate cannabis takeover is definitely sweeping the world over. And I mean, we just got to have more voices like this one. We have Jody Emery. Obviously, this is probably the 20th video that I'm going to have that in the hashtag in the title of the corporate marijuana takeover. It's underway, folks, and if you don't believe it, just wait till it comes to your area and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. From Arkansas to Michigan to California, all over the world,